Welcome to Dedham, Massachusetts, home of many historical trials through the years, including Sacco and Vanzetti. But right now in 2025, it's all about the case against Karen Read. Today, day 3 of jury deliberations, and it was a wild day. Today was as close as you could come to a verdict without actually having a verdict. The streets were packed, the anticipation was high, and the notes from the jury were leading us down a road where we thought they were just moments away from delivering a verdict. It didn't happen, but a lot else did happen today. And tonight, as we are live with the courthouse behind us, we're going to bring you all the details, all the analysis, and everything you need to know to be ready for tomorrow, day 4 of jury deliberations. I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. And I'm telling you, this was, if you were watching during the day or you're just joining us tonight, what a day. It was intense. And that's just from my perspective. I'm just covering the story. But for the people who have been so passionate about this case, beginning, of course, with the defendant, the victim's family, the prosecution, and the lawyers, they had to be riding a roller coaster today, ready to hear a potential verdict and ready to answer these questions, which may have given us a lot of information about what this jury is thinking. So let's do this, because I've got him right next to me, joining me live in Dedham, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who was on this wild ride today with all of us. This was some day. I thought today was going to be the day. It wasn't, but wow.
And you said that live on TV. I thought by this time today, you were going to be wearing that red tie that's probably in your pocket.
It's still here.
It is, see?
It's still here. Haven't been putting it on, but it was an incredible ride. We'll get to the notes in just a second, but let's talk first about the defendant, Karen Read, and her team today.
You know, Karen Read, for the most part, leading up to this, every day during the first trial, let's compare the two first off, because leading up to this retrial, last year, you recall, all of those questions that they would answer when they would leave the courthouse, walk through the sea of supporters that they had last year as well. But this year, those attorneys are under a gag order. So it's only been Karen Read that's been able to answer any sort of question from the media, and she's answered quite a few. She told us first that she wasn't going to testify.
When you say us, you mean you, because you're asking all the questions.
Well, you know, Court TV.
Sure.
But, you know, but she is doing what she did last year during the verdict watch and really staying, you know, saying no comment and not commenting to anybody and, you know, just being in silence like what we're seeing with her supporters. Inside the courtroom, you can see the mood shift, the different times that they're being brought into the courthouse today. There was different moods with that. You know, is it a question? Is it a verdict? We don't know. And in the gallery each and every day during trial 1, trial 2, through this whole process, obviously, is her mom and dad and her brother. Her brother, her father rather, basically being the spokesperson at this point in time. Here's what he had to say. Hi, Mrs. Read.
Hi.
Mr. Read, any comment?
Not really. Not really.
How are you spending the deliberation time?
In prayer, and, you know, that's about it.
Mr. Reed, your family looked visibly relieved. There was like an exasperation moment when you found out the question.
Yes.
Do you feel the jury's leaning a certain way?
Well, you just, you know, you make inferences to the best you can, but you never know what anybody's thinking.
Are you prepared for a verdict?
Inside the courtroom.
I'm prepared to hopefully find our daughter free. Yeah.
Would just OUI be a win for your family? If it was just that lowest charge?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the emotion inside the courtroom.
You can cut it with a knife, I think. Yeah. I've got to run, okay?
Some people were crying when they learned about the instructions or the questions. Were people feeling emotions?
I didn't see any people crying, unless I just didn't observe it.
What were you feeling?
Again, it's difficult to read into, you know, what those questions were. I don't want to make any inferences or intimations from those questions. I mean, you know, we're all reasonable people. You heard it yourself, and I'll just go with what I heard. But I mean, to extend beyond that, we'll play this thing. I'll come in back in about an hour, and that's how we do it. I mean, I've been playing this out for 3.5 years.
Did you feel the judge was responsive to what the defense said?
I'll let the attorneys respond to that.
Would you consider a conviction?
Bill, why they wanted you back at 1:30?
Mr. do you want to?
Yeah, I've got. No, I'm not sure. I'm not privy to that.
Would you consider an OUI conviction a win for Karen Reed?
I just want our daughter home. Yeah, and free.
So Bill Reed right there, you know, someone that was also involved on another level in trial number 2 because he was on the witness list, Vinnie, as you know, never called as a witness. He told me several times out on the courthouse steps behind us, he wanted to be called. He wanted to describe that taillight that he says was only missing a piece.
Yeah. Oh, defense could have called him, too. Like,
that's true.
We can't forget that the defense had the opportunity to call Karen Reed's father. They did not. Did you notice the same thing I did? I thought at the end of the day yesterday, Karen Reed and her team walking out kind of down a little bit. During the day today, after these notes and everything, I noticed they seem to be walking with a little bounce in their step. Is that just me?
It's been up down, I think. You know, it kind of depending on the part of the day and where we are in proceedings. I agree with you with that assessment. And then earlier today, the day started with a slap on the wrist from Judge Beverly Cannoni, where she was actually saying, I want you here, all parties, at 4 o'clock. When the jury's, we check in on the jury to make sure if they're going to deliberate past 4 p.m. And you already talked about that with the security and everything. But after that moment, I noticed that they all had long faces as well. But then there were times earlier today where they seemed a little bit more upbeat.
Yeah. Let's talk about Karen Reed.
Yeah.
Did she have a message for her supporters today? Was there any sort of interaction? Because in the streets behind us, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people showed up by the end of the day.
Yeah, there was someone that came out of the courthouse and presented a message that she said was from Karen Reed, this defendant, and let's listen to it.
Let's be respectful of everybody in this whole thing. You didn't come here to be disrespectful to anybody, so please.
Just pass the word around. Thank you.
Stay out of the street.
Stay off the street.
No matter what.
Remember,
there's children down here, so don't go running and topple people. You have small children. You got senior citizens, elderly,
disabled,
people,
special needs,
animals. We all got it.
Don't look at Jacqueline. It's wild over here.
Thank you.
So they went inside, they came back, and they conveyed that message: respect, be quiet, basically don't break the rules that are a little bit, relaxed in the buffer zone, but it's still in effect. But, they're allowed to assemble quietly with no signs. And these are the individuals that seem to be organizing and also speaking with the police officers, the state troopers that are maintaining the buffer zone, helping the O'Keefe family, the Reed family come in and out of the courthouse, and Hank Brennan. But they speak with the officers, then they go back out into the crowd and they say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Hey, if there's a verdict, here's how we should behave. We may have to move. They're really helping to facilitate the crowd control.
Yeah. So the other thing that's striking, right, are the moments when Karen Reed and her team are walking the streets, hundreds of people, it gets more quiet.
Right, it does.
It gets silent in these streets, which is so striking, because when nothing is happening, there's general conversation, but when Karen Reed and her team come out, it's not cheers, it's not, it gets...
But it had been until verdict watch.
Right.
Yes.
Super quiet.
Yeah, very quiet.
I mean, it was like, not eerie, but very striking.
You just hear the traffic in the street, and hear the reporters, saying things like "pole," because you don't want the sidewalks are so narrow. You don't want the photographers to fall as they're walking backwards. So you hear the scuffle of the shoes and people trying to ask questions. But out here, it's quiet.
No one says a word.
It's
unreal. Okay, let's talk about John O'Keefe's family. What can you tell us about today?
Okay, so, John O'Keefe's family have been wearing blue in solidarity for each other each and every day during these deliberations. We were seeing them walk in groups again today. They have been here each and every day during Trial 1 and Trial 2. We also saw some supporters out here on the courthouse steps. Not as many, maybe 1, 2, maybe a handful of others that we didn't interact with. But you actually had the opportunity to interview one of them, if we can listen to that.
We're looking for closure. I think everybody's looking for closure at this point in time. I certainly feel strongly about the Commonwealth's case. I feel like they did a phenomenal job. I feel like the data is the data. I feel like this is a very simple DUI homicide case. Whether or not she intended to do it or not, I believe that's up for debate. But I think the prosecution certainly presented a very, very strong case. And I quite honestly think the rest of it on the defense side is just a smokescreen.
And there's a lot of people that are out here as supporters or observers, and there's a lot of people not in pink. Perhaps there are more people that we just may not know are supporting the O'Keefe family or just wanting to see this play out and maybe don't view it the same as the pink crowd, if I can put it that way,
Sure.
And last year, once again, if we can compare, because a lot of people are comparing the verdict watch last year to this year, there was a group of people that were holding signs last year that had Officer O'Keefe's badge number. They were all wearing blue. And then there was another very small group of people that considered themselves protesters of the person Karen Read. And they were holding signs and saying things to that nature.
Yeah. Haven't seen them this time around, but...
that was at the very end.
At the very end, I remember.
Took 5 days.
And I thought that was going to lead into this year, but it didn't.
May happen tomorrow. We don't know.
It could. It could. Well, all right, let's talk about the big news today, because we did hear from the jury, these series of questions.
There were 4 total, but it's the 3 that I really want to talk to you about, because these are what really was the showstopper of the day. Everybody just was thinking that it was actually a verdict. You really felt the mood at the courthouse change. I don't know how much more we can talk about it because it just doesn't get conveyed through your screen. But when all parties assembled, it was very interesting questions, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's take a listen.
What is the time frame for the OUI charge? Offense 002, Section 5. OUI at 12:45 or OUI at 5 a.m. The second, are video clips of Karen's interviews evidence? How can we consider them? And the third, does convicting guilty on a subcharge, example offense 2, number 5, convict the overall charge?
I mean, there's so much to unpack here, and it's, your mind goes, okay, so are they hung up on just one charge? And then also, does that charge really still relate to the first question that was read? We don't know the order of which they were written, but, to the OUI, which is a DUI in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Is that what they're hung up on right now? And then is it the time before the alleged incident, or is it after, when she's just driving back to the house later?
Right.
A lot can be like everything in this case. It's clear as mud where this jury is.
Yeah, the question about the clips, that was an easy one, right? It's evidence in the case. They are evidence, and you consider them like any other piece of evidence.
I think it's easy for the judge to say how to interpret it.
Right.
But I think that what the Commonwealth was trying to imply with the recommendation from the judge to give, talk to the jury, I think they wanted her to say, take it as face weight as if this defendant testified.
Right.
I think that that's what they wanted.
Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable.
But, yeah.
A lot to talk about, and we're going to continue to talk about it, but Matt Johnson working so hard day in and day out, day after day, week after week, month after month, and now year after year on this case. Thank you so much.
Of course.
We'll be here tomorrow morning, super early. Okay. Let's do this, folks. There was a 4th question Another fascinating question from this jury. I want you to take a listen to the judge talking about it. Then we're going to talk about it. Let's listen.
We received a question from the jurors. If we find not guilty on 2 charges but can't agree on 1 charge, is it a hung jury on all 3 charges or just 1 charge? I got some input from the defense at sidebar, essentially saying if we could just ignore it. We can't ignore it. To me, it's a theoretical question, and we don't answer theoretical questions. I tell the jurors that they're not to be concerned with the consequences of their verdict, and that's exactly what they're doing here. So I would propose just writing simply, this is not a question I can answer on this, and sending it back.
The defense position is not, certainly not for it. I agree, we can't ignore your question. However, I think that it is apropos, given the timing of when that question came in, literally before the court had answered the other 3 note card questions. I think that it would be appropriate to send a quick note just asking them, given the fact that there's some clarity in your other questions, does this answer your question? In other words, can you proceed without any further input by the court regarding that second question?
So that made sense initially, but why ask them, do I really need to answer it, to then tell them I'm not answering it?
Because I think at some point, they need to know what the law is. It's a reporting question. In other words, I don't see it as theoretical, as the court indicated. I see it a little bit differently, which is what are our options? And the options are built in the law, not in theory. If they come back with a verdict on more than 1 count, but they're hung on a separate count, they are to report those 2 counts, whatever counts they came to a verdict on.
So that's for a later time, right? So this is at this point.
Right.
It's premature, it's hypothetical, it's theoretical. I understand your point. I think I disagree with you at this point. It may be something later. The way the question's worded, if I find this, if we do this. I'll hear from the Commonwealth.
We agree it's consequence related. Your first suggestion, I think, is most appropriate, and we would endorse that.
Yeah, I'm going to do that at this time, Mr. Jackson. I'm not going to have a back and forth with them. I'm simply going to say, because it's true, it's the law, that this is not a question I can answer.
Believe it or not, the jury doesn't understand what it means to be deadlocked. That's the bottom line of this question. That's what they're really asking. They don't understand it. It's unreal that 1 year later, we've got 12 new jurors with the same problem. It's unbelievable. And for whatever reason, it cannot be answered. Let's bring in our guests to try to get an answer. Our Karen Reed trial insiders here in Dedham. Criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin is with us, and former prosecutor Margaret McLean. She's also the host of the podcast It's a Crime with Margaret McLean. Also joining us, Kevin Lenahan, author of the book Storm of Suspicion, The Karen Reed Trials, and Karen Reed supporter and insider Nick Rocco. Welcome to everyone. I'm going to begin here with our lawyers. Let me put it up on the screen one more time, this question. I want it to sink in. I want everyone at home to read it. If we find not guilty on 2 charges but can't agree on 1 charge, is it a hung jury on all 3 charges or just 1 charge? Why can't we let him know? Why can't we answer him? Why can't we answer this jury and let them know what a deadlock jury is? They didn't go to law school. They don't work at court TV. They're not prosecutors. They don't wear robes. Why can't we tell them? Why not? Why can't we answer the question?
We can't tell them because that would be, I have a feeling they're in there speculating. They're thinking, maybe they're thinking it was a hung jury last time. And Judge Cannoni made the right decision because she doesn't want to overstep. It's a hypothetical. And
is it a hypothetical?
I think it is, yes.
Isn't it a hypothetical when we say, if, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, you find the evidence is proven beyond a reasonable doubt, you must find them guilty? Isn't that hypothetically? Hypothetically, they could find that? There's all hypotheticals when we instruct juries. I'm not yelling at you.
No,
I'm yelling at the system of justice. So please, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's fine, and I understand your frustration.
Yes.
Okay, many people are frustrated, but I think here in Massachusetts, Judge Cannoni made the right decision because sending them back in to deliberate, because they don't want to be speculating on the consequences of what their verdict is going to be, and that's what it would be, a total speculation of what their verdict would be.
No, it's not what their verdict would be. It's how do I report my verdict? Do we send a note and say we are deadlocked if we have only reached 2 of the 3? That was the problem we had last year. Those who don't learn learn from the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. It goes something like that. Peter, what's going on in your state? I'm sorry.
The very fact that this is a second trial with basically the second time the jury's been confused. Now, let me just say this. Judge Cannoni is on solid ground. The law has backed her up already.
Again, I'm not blaming the judge. I'm blaming the law.
Right. But it's the old excuse, you start a new job somewhere and you want to try something new and they say, no, this is the way we've always done it. And they fall back on that. And this is where this is. But I think it's terrible. The whole point of a jury is that they should be very clear. They should not be confused at all. They should know exactly what they need to do. They're not lawyers. They're not legal experts. And that's the beauty of the jury system. We have average people who can, from every walk of, whether they work at a dry cleaners or McDonald's or an Amazon warehouse, and they're there to, do their very best. It's the absolute highest level, the civic duty, the cornerstone of our democracy. And the fact that they're confused the second time, that really says somebody better clear this up for our state. And we better
it's no longer an aberration. We can't blame the jury here, Kevin Lenahan. We cannot blame the jury if 2 juries in a row are having a similar issue. There's something wrong going on here.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be clear. Here's a hypothetical I just came up with on the spot. What if somebody drives through a red light, is pulled over by a cop, and he shoots the cop and kills him? And he's charged in court with running a red light and murdering the cop. And the jury is deadlocked on whether or not the guy shot the cop, but they agree that he ran the red light. So is that enough if you convict him? Or let's say they agree that he didn't run the red light. But so if you get a unanimous decision on that charge, does that mean that it's not a hung jury on the other charge if you don't get a unanimous decision on the other charge, when that's the more important charge? So I don't know. I do think it needs to be clearer.
Yeah, well, they all have to agree one way or the other on each charge, and all 12 have to agree in order to move to the next. Nick Rocco, what are your thoughts tonight with this unexpected twist?
So I think the easiest way to solve the issue with having these hung jurors is just to add the words "not guilty" with a box next to it that they can check off, because I think, obviously, by the note, they're under the impression that if they vote guilty for a lesser included charge, that also may mean that they're voting for the top charges as well. So the fact that they are confused about the same issue, that the defense team had tried to prevent this by, submitting their own verdict form, which may have been a little clearer, and obviously Judge Beverly Cannoni denied that, because anything the defense does, she doesn't agree with. But I think the little changes that she made today were more in part of what the defense was trying to put forward. She's now just, saying it's more her idea. So ultimately, I think the biggest thing they need to change is just have the word "not guilty" on it and treat them almost as an individual charge.
Didn't Judge Cannoni add
there's a
second charge? If I remember right, sorry, but didn't she agree to add the part 5 on the second charge? So I don't think she's gone. She's gone
they
along with the
added
defense on a lot of this.
Well, you don't think Judge Bev's going to agree to put another charge against Karen Reed? I mean, I think that was a no-brainer that she would accept that.
But that gave the jury an easier way out, where she could have got off with literally just being convicted of OUI.
But they're still hung on the same situation, right? They're still hung on charge 2, because I think it has to do with the language.
It sounds exactly like they're hung on charge 2. Let's do this. Everybody's staying. We've got a big hour ahead, then we've got another hour coming up. Folks, don't go anywhere. We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts, getting ready for day 4 of jury deliberations in the Karen Reed retrial of the century.
What was the result of the testing for alcohol in the defendant's blood when it was taken shortly after 9 a.m. on January 29th?
93 milligrams per deciliter.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, Let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering. He is the boogeyman.
So many eyes have been on Donna Adelson from the beginning.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We received a question from the jurors. If we find not guilty on 2 charges but can't agree on 1 charge, is it a hung jury on all 3 charges or just 1 charge? I got some input from the defense at sidebar, essentially saying if we could just ignore it. We can't ignore it. To me, it's a theoretical question, and we don't answer theoretical questions. I tell the jurors that they're not to be concerned with the consequences of their verdict, and that's exactly what they're doing here. So I would propose just writing simply, this is not a question I can answer on this, and sending it back.
Okay, the judge came to the determination that it was theoretical, and if you read it a certain way, yes, the word if is there. There's also semantics in the way we talk. Like if we find her guilty on these 2, but are hung on the 3rd, is it a hung jury on all 3 or just 1? Like it isn't necessarily theoretical, at least from my perspective. It's a question of semantics and how people speak and communicate, right? Under like 100% like the Queen's English or whatever, yes, it's theoretical. So the judge is on safe legal grounds here. I get it. That doesn't mean the jury's not confused. That doesn't mean they're not confused. There were 3 other questions I want to get into. Let's put the first one up for everyone, and we'll read it for you together. What is the time frame for the OUI charge at 12:45 a.m. or 5 o'clock a.m.? Oh my goodness, Nick Rocco, this is huge. Well, what are you taking away from this? And I'll tell you if I'm taking away the same thing.
Well, the fact that they're asking about the OUI charge means that they went through the list of other lesser included charges and they're not finding her guilty on those, and then the last option there is OUI, which, you know, the other questions that were asked as well seem to play along with the OUI charge, and I believe that's what they're hung on.
Let me ask you, Margaret, about that. Here's my take on it. You tell me your take. If they're deciding if it's 12:45 or 5 a.m., 12:45, she's driving back from 34 Fairview back to John O'Keefe's house. At 5 o'clock, she's driving from John O'Keefe's house to Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts, you know, hooking up with them. Alan Jackson, in his closing argument, remember what he said? We don't know when she drank. She could have drank when she got back to John O'Keefe's after 12:45, but before 5 o'clock.
That's right.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and you know...
That's a win for the defense, sorry.
I don't know. I disagree with that. I mean, think about it. First of all, they got the time wrong, kind of, because remember, she was driving and she connected with the Wi-Fi at 12:36. So had she gotten out of the car by 12:35, it's a possibility. But
I think it's an estimated time because she technically leaves at 5:07, but it's like 5 o'clock or 12:45. Those are 2 distinct times. Alan Jackson injected in his closing argument, oh, maybe she drank when she went back. They're talking about that.
They definitely are, but you know what really struck me today was I thought, oh, case was over when I was watching at home. They were going to come back with a verdict, but the fact that they were talking about the OUI and they went home tells me they might be discussing the involuntary manslaughter or the manslaughter charge.
Interesting. Let's take a look at the next question. We'll put it up on the screen for everybody, including me. Okay. I can't read that. There we go. Now I can read it. Our video clips, I got it. Our video clips of Karen's interview evidence, how can we consider them? Peter Elkin, that's evidence. They're evidence.
Right. It was introduced to trial. It's simply evidence. You're right. And they can consider that. And since the prosecution was the one who really wanted those clips in and introduced it, I think that would be a little bit unfavorable for the prosecution.
Okay.
I would say.
I have another take on it. Kevin Lenahan, here's my take. If we're talking about OUI, can we use the clips? She's talking a lot about drinking. There are a whole bunch of clips about Karen Read drinking. What are your thoughts about this particular question?
That's a good point, because that would relate all three of those questions to the same topic. And we have to look at what evidence the jury can be looking at for a DUI here. So you have the bar tab, you have the video surveillance that shows how many drinks she had, but she could argue that the drinks are watered down or something like that. Then the other thing you go to is the evidence of the witnesses. The witnesses in the waterfall didn't seem to think that she acted intoxicated. But we also, well, see, this wasn't really introduced to the jury, but she's kind of a professional drinker that drinks every day, so she's a functional alcoholic. She can handle this. On the other hand, Jen McCabe found her to be so drunk at 5:45 that she wanted to drive the vehicle for, and they wouldn't allow her to drive. So this could be what the jury was looking at.
All right, let's take a look at that final question for the jury, because this is another really important one, extremely significant one. We'll put it up on the screen and I will read it. I cannot see it. Here we go, I got it. Does convicting guilty on a subcharge, offense 2, number 5, convict the overall charge? Okay, I don't really understand that, but what I'm taking away from this, Margaret, is that they are stuck in 2 and they're on number 5?
Well, not necessarily.
Why would you ask this if you're not on number 5, Margaret?
I think they looked at number 5, but the fact that they went home tells me that they could possibly be on number 1 of number 2, or number 2 of number 2. And the way Judge Cannoni described it, I thought was excellent. She said it's like a ladder. You're at the top rung, which is manslaughter. Then you go to the next rung, which is involuntary manslaughter.
They're on the bottom
then the
rung.
Homicide. I know, but that doesn't. They just had a question, a hypothetical. I don't think it means they've decided on all the top rungs.
Okay.
That's
all right.
what I think.
Fascinating. Fascinating day. All right. Guests are staying with us. We've got a lot more to get to. When we come back, we continue talking about all the action today, which I've never seen a jury tell us so much without delivering a verdict. That's what happened today. We'll be right back. Live from Dedham,
I'm kind of speechless at the moment right now, because it's just like it's very overwhelming. We're all emotionally invested in this, and we just want what's right, and we want the truth to come out. And by getting Karen Read free, maybe we can get justice for John O'Keefe.
Mrs. O'Keefe, she lost her son in all of this, and it's sad. It's really sad.
There were a lot of people here today. The crowd started off, it was light, and then it filled in, and boy, did it fill in. I want to show you, because I walked from the top of the street down to the bottom of the street, just to give you an idea of how many people were here as we got closer and closer to the time that everyone thought a verdict was coming down. We started here at the top of the street, which I call the gauntlet. We're going to walk through it so you can see the number of people and how far it stretches. You've been getting sort of a snapshot. I want to give you the full picture as we walk and talk here. As we make our way down the street, you can see folks lined up on the left. These are the folks who get the shade of the tree, and in case it rains, they're protected. These folks, VIP in the benches that they have. You'll notice the similar colors. Almost everyone is wearing some shade of pink. And now we get to the part you start to see more and more American flags that were being handed out. This is sort of the epicenter across the street from the courthouse steps. Folks have been gathering here. Law enforcement's done an amazing job in communicating with everyone what expectations are if and when a verdict comes down. But you can see I'm moving a little more slowly now because there's many more people gathered here. This is an area, again, you can't chant, you can't show your signs, but you can see the density of the crowd in this area, which is just across the street. These are the steps that we've been broadcasting from. My show, Matt Johnson. We come down here. This is the grassy knoll that I've been talking about, the area under the tree. It goes back 3. You got to be here early to get these seats, but folks have gotten them. There we go. You've got more folks up here going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deep in this area. Best dressed always. Good, good. And we move down the street. We're still in the buffer zone, so we're still inside the buffer zone. we've just cleared, if you look, we just cleared the courthouse, right? So now we're getting to the area close to where, you can see Matt Johnson is over there. If you look in the distance, you can see Matt. Matt's getting ready. He's across from the folks who get the closest to Karen Reed and her team. We've got more folks here. Again, still buffer zone. Great area over here, lots of lawn chairs. People have a seat. People getting to know each other. A lot of them know each other already through this and other reasons. Now, as we cross the street, it starts to thin out a little bit, but it's not quite over because I'm going to show you the end of the buffer zone as we keep walking down. Now, during the trial, there were many more people down in this area because this is where you could wear your shirts and people were watching live streams of the trial. But you have people lined up down here as well. And the further we go, the closer we get to really what was the epicenter of the supporters during the trial. As we move down here, it's a little more comfortable, less crowded, but you're still not far from the courthouse. If you turn around from here, you can see where we are in reference to the courthouse. It's still not far, and you cross the street right here if you want to get into the part that greets the defense team and Karen Reed when they show up in the SUVs. And obviously, folks who are sitting here will be able to see those SUVs arrive. And when there's a verdict, that's going to be one of the indications when the defense team or John O'Keefe's family enters the courtroom once again. Down here, folks got some coolers. Looks like you might have a rubber duck or a chickie or something going on over here. Not quite sure what that turtle or frog means. Turtle, there you go. And then down here, this is really the heart of, during the trial, day in and day out, the folks in this area who are allowed. Because right here, this is the sign. We are now exiting the buffer zone. Okay, so this is the, I guess, the non-buffer zone or the buffer-free zone. And here folks can do whatever they want to express themselves with their shirts and signs and making noise. So that's the entire gauntlet. All right, let's bring back in our Karen Reed trial insiders. Here with me live in Dedham, Peter Ellikin, Margaret McLean. Also joining us, Kevin Lenahan and Karen Reed supporter and insider Nick Rocco. Nick, give me an idea of where you are tonight and where the rest of the supporters are, what their thoughts are, what their feelings are.
I think everybody is ready for a verdict in this situation. It's been a long, 2.5, almost 3 years of this case ongoing, and I know the defense team, they're ready for a verdict as well. Obviously, after those notes had come out from the jury, you had said it as well. You saw a little bounce in their step. It was good for them. It gave them, basically lifted their spirits a little bit because it was the first time they actually heard anything from the jury, so we could kind of gauge where their mind was at. And, I'd be surprised if they go past tomorrow, but I believe, tomorrow is going to be the day.
Kevin Lenahan, I know you've got contacts with folks close to the John O'Keefe supporters and the family. Where do you think they are tonight? Where are you tonight in terms of as we wait for day 4 to begin?
So I think the questions had people a little nervous because it looked like the jury was heading towards maybe just convicting only on the OUI, which really showed the cleverness of the defense team in getting that added to give them that one small thing where the jury could get away with giving them some small thing and say we did our job and then acquitting on the rest. But then when there, as Margaret said, when there wasn't a decision by the end of the day, that really made us look at those questions in a very different light. So at this point, I think everybody just says, we know nothing. Nobody knows anything on either side except for the people in that jury room. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the decision is.
All right, Peter Ellikin, where are you tonight? Who should be hopeful, optimistic tonight?
Vinnie, as any long-term lawyer can tell you, what juries do inside that room, it's a mystical art, it's voodoo science. We're always wrong when we try to guess about the jury.
But they sent us notes, Peter.
I'll tell you, then I got mixed messages because the first notes, it looked like they were really close to a verdict. And I thought perhaps they just wanted a little clarification and they'd come back after lunch and give a verdict. Then when they came up with that fourth question and all of a sudden they're saying, well, if we're on not guilty on 2 of them, but we're deadlocked on another, what happens then? So then I was starting to think, are they deadlocked? Or is this going to go on for a few days? Because if they're deadlocked, as we all know, the judge will say, come back and try again, or come back and try.
It takes a while.
So we'll have a few more extra days there. So that's why I was like, I think everybody was kind of on a roller coaster today. At first, myself, I thought it was going to be perhaps a really quick verdict, and all of a sudden then I pulled back and said, what if they're deadlocked?
Where are you tonight?
I think they're fighting in the jury deliberation room over that OUI manslaughter. That would be my guess. I mean, because, like I said before, they didn't come back.
So if they're fighting over the OUI manslaughter, oh, you think it's not just the OUI, it's the OUI manslaughter?
I think it's the OUI manslaughter and possibly the lesser includeds of that. I think they'll probably be a not guilty on second degree and leaving the scene. But I think they're looking at all, like I said, they're going down the rungs of the ladder, and I think they went back up, and they're thinking about it again.
Let me ask you, Nick, what are your thoughts about the defense team and Karen Reed? If it turns out that way, let's say, hypothetically, theoretically, not guilty on 1 and 3, and it ends up as a hung jury on count 2. Do you think the defense team, Karen Reed, and all her supporters are prepared for round 3?
I mean, that's a question that I don't think anybody can answer. Honestly, it will be up to the DA if he decides to retry her for a third time on one charge. You know, we obviously see the same thing happening, repeating itself in trial 1 that it is doing in trial 2. Hopefully there's no trial 3. I'm very hopeful that the jury is going to come to a unanimous decision on whatever they are hung on, and we can put all this to bed now at this point.
You can hear the sirens behind us. Everyone is safe, but there's an emergency somewhere in Norfolk County. I want to thank everyone, and I just want to give you a couple of words from me, what I think. I think it'd be one of two things with this jury. They could be fighting, like Margaret said, or, in the alternative, they could have reached a verdict, and they wanted to sleep on it. If that's the case, you need to be tuned in first thing tomorrow morning. I'll be here. You've got to be here watching. I also think that if they are, in fact, debating OUI by itself, that 5th charge, number 5 in count 2, and that's the hang-up, and that hangs this jury, it was a bad move to put it in there, because then Karen Reed would have to come back and face manslaughter all over again. If, in fact, they found her not guilty of everything up to that last charge, she would still have to face those 4 once again. But we don't know. Only the jury knows. Once again, thank you, Peter Ellikin, Margaret McLean, Kevin Lenahan, Nick Rocco, our insiders. I'm sure we'll be speaking again really, really soon. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight as we are live from Dedham.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
The brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Detectives arrested Brian Kohlberger.
And I pray that we have justice.
The Idaho College student murders trial. Live coverage begins this August, only on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board, see what's happening in the world of crime and justice outside of Dedham, Massachusetts. Indictment dismissed. That's Michael Colucci. We are gearing up for a big trial in South Carolina, also a retrial, and the judge dismissed the indictment without prejudice. He was accused of murdering his wife. His defense was that she hung herself with a garden hose. First jury was hung, and now the indictment's been dismissed, but without prejudice. That means prosecutors can re-indict him and refile charges. We'll keep an eye on that for you. I need you to keep an eye on your screen right now because we have a missing child who needs your help. This is Martin de los Santos, missing since June 11th out of the Bronx in New York, 18 years old. If you have information, you call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Dobbs Ferry, New York Police Department. That number's on your screen. Let's see if we can get Martin to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates live from Dedham up next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.